Hey! Hi! How you doing? This is the Gamertron, and welcome back to the Gamertron Show. Let's talk about combat. Let's talk about combat in video games. It is the primary source of fun, source of interaction in an action video game, in a melee hack-and-slash beat-em-up game, in a shooter game, in an action-adventure game that combines several elements of shooter and melee combat. In an action video game, combat is always at the center and is arguably, well, not really arguably, truthfully, combat is most important in an action video game. Let's analyze this. Let's look at this closely when it comes to combat in video games and action games, and just how truly important is combat in video games. Let's look at this. Let's analyze this. Now, back in the olden days of the 90s and 80s, video game combat was extremely limited. It was just either one or two button presses. Shoot gun, punch, kick, rapidly tap the buttons to perform some sort of combo, maybe a grab move, maybe use a special item or a special ability from time to time. But either in that, video game combat was extremely simple. However, to make up for the simplicity of their games, developers would make the games extremely challenging. Those simple attacks and moves you had, it would take a lot of those just to take a single enemy down, or a boss, or you wouldn't be able to take a lot of hits before going down. Now, as video game combat evolved from the early 2000s to today, video game combat has been similar, yet completely different from game to game. Now, a lot of video games have extremely complex and vast combat systems, with a variety of different moves and modes and abilities and weapons and yada yada yada. List goes on and on and on. What were once 1-2 button presses have now become multi-hit, multi-power, multi-usage, crazy over-the-top combos and moves. What before was just a sprite swinging a sword up and down, we now have games like Devil May Cry where you perform crazy acrobatics with blade and gun. We now have video games like Dark Souls where the combat system is pretty simple, easy to get into, yet hard to master. You gotta watch that stamina bar, you gotta know when to attack at the right time and how to attack. Light strikes, a heavy strike, a parry perhaps? When's the perfect time to dodge roll? When's the perfect time to block? Your survival in the game depends on you mastering the combat, learning enemy patterns, and forming your own. Then we have a combat system in the same vein as to the game you are watching gameplay of, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, where you must balance between basic melee attacks, counters, ranged attacks, using special abilities, and performing crowd control with massive groups and mobs of enemies. Yeah, video game combat has really become something more than the simplistic single button press, simple punch animation or swinging the sword up and down animation. Now we have video games with stellar combat that's both challenging mentally and physically, what with the controls, and just a visual treat to behold. Video game graphics, video game visuals have also been something that has really improved combat. Even though you may be pressing the same attack button over and over again, your character may not be performing the same animation, and the enemy may not be reacting or looking the same way, may not have the same special effects. The list goes on and on. Video game graphics are also an element next to video game controls and the variety and variation when it comes to video game combat. Visually, graphics have really also improved video game combat. I mean, let's look at a video game like the Uncharted series. The Uncharted video games have very simple melee combat. It is literally just a single button press over and over and over again with a few others here and there. But the visuals, the animations are just so fluid and crisp and impactful and lack clipping. It is shocking how much non-clipping, how the lack of clipping in the fights, in the combat there is, that it's so engaging. And back to the game, you are seeing gameplay of Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. Looking at this gameplay, it's the Lord of the Rings fight scenes come out of the movies, put into video games, and now you have control over it. This gameplay you are seeing of Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor can only be found in this video. Can only be found in this video recording I recorded of the gameplay of Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. Back in the early days of video games, if you had seen one playthrough of it, you knew what to expect, you knew what to see. Seeing it was nearly the same as doing it, but with video games nowadays, with the varying animations, and the visuals, and the control, and the customization, and the variety, and the variation, and the player input and creativity, video game combat has become something that is endlessly replayable, endlessly watchable. It varies from video to video, from gameplay to gameplay, from player to player. And it's also why video game combat and video game action scenes are competing against, if not outmatching, action scenes found in movies. Let me give an example. Say we have a movie where this guy's in a gun battle with some thugs in a car and guys in a helicopter. Say in this action scene the guy shoots out the car and then runs away ignoring the helicopter. If this were a video game like Grand Theft Auto, or Saints Row, or Just Cause 2, just insert open world video game with guns in here. In any of those video games, if a situation like that happened, there wouldn't be just one way, as seen in the action scene of that movie. Once you've seen it, you've seen it. It can't be altered or changed, but in an action video game, there's 1,000,001 different possibilities. The guy could shoot out the helicopter and it crashed into the car. The guy could shoot out the guys in the car, steal the car, drive it off of something and hit the helicopter. Or the guy could pull out an RPG and just blow up both the helicopter and the car. Like, yeah, much more entertaining, much more interesting. With video games and their combat systems nowadays, and action scenes in video games, video game combat just... it's not so singular, it's not so seen it, done it. When you've seen an action movie, or you've seen a fight scene in an action movie, you've seen it. There's no other way to see it. With an action video game, and with the combat systems found in action games nowadays, nothing is the same. Nothing will look the same or feel the same. And that variety, that variation, that seemingly endless possibility found when it comes to video games and their action scenes and their combat, well, it's staggeringly more interesting than an action movie. Why watch combat going on when you can be part of the combat and you can shape the combat and you can change the combat to your liking? You can be defensive, you can be offensive, it doesn't matter. Video games let you play the game your way. So yeah, how truly important is combat in video games? Endlessly important when it has such an effect as this. This has been the Gamertron, this has been the Gamertron Show, this has been a video. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed the video or agree with me if did you enjoy the gameplay. If you liked anything about this video, please hit the like button. Hitting the like button helps me, helps you, helps everybody involved with the video. If you hit that like button, please leave a comment. What did you think of the commentary? What did you think of the gameplay? What do you think of my opinion? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Leave a comment on them. And finally, I am the Gamertron, and this is the Gamertron Show. I love video games, and I love talking about video games. And if that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing to my channel and supporting me. It is really appreciated. Anyways, guys, this has been a video. I hope you guys liked it, and I will see you guys later.